your lives healthier. Relevant to those of you listening right now, I see you out there eating that Snickers on your way to your next call. We know what you're doing, and it's time to stop that and get back on track to some healthy living. We have Dr. Jarom Ipson joining us today. We're very excited to have him on to talk to us about how to get healthier. Welcome here, doctor.
Yeah, glad to be here.
Before we just leave it at health specialist, like that sounds so cliche and generic. You know what I like about Dr. J? And we're going to call him Dr. J from here on out. Cool, Nate?
Oh, that works for me.
Yeah. Dr. J is a friend of mine, mutual friend of some people that I hang out with, and treats many of the people that I know and hang out with. What I like about Dr. J is we started talking about hormones at one point, and I had talked about my first hormone doctor that I don't know why we're going down this tangent now. It's probably something for later, but I was talking about how the first guy I had seen I was like, for no particular reason, I lost all my testosterone. I had never been tested before, no idea. He just saw me one day at a physical and said, what's going on with you? By looking at me, he knew. And it was 170, which is not great for a 38-year-old dude. And he got me up to like 400 and said, that's about where you should be for a 40-year-old guy. And I was just telling Dr. J the story before I went to another one. And he said, that's not optimal. And we like to optimize your hormones. And I was like,
oh, boy. You're
speaking my language, doc. I want to be about 40,000. Can we do that?
Well, if we wanted your heart to explode, we could get to 40,000. But how about 1,000?
Yeah, optimal meaning like at that time I was 38 or 39. I'm 45 now. But like I don't want to be where I'm supposed to be at 45. If I have to do that, then put me where a 25-year-old would be, right?
Right. So, well, that's a really interesting topic because I know we're going to be talking about testosterone because it's so important for every person, whether they're just the tech starting out or the owner of the business. Testosterone for men is like the hormone that is the biggest piece of the puzzle that makes them go. And being optimal is very different than being normal. Normal men are on a total testosterone level around 250 to anywhere up to 1,200. And so most men come in at, 170, 250, 350, 450, and they're told that's good. But where we want to be on testosterone for your brain to function the best, for your body to function as best, for your heart to function as best, is somewhere between 900 and 1,200 for really all men, whether you're 25 or you're 85, anywhere in between. The male body is made to function best at the optimal range.
Well, it sounds intriguing to start off with here, Dr. J. Before we get into that, why don't you give us a little bit about your history and background and how you decided to put a doctor in front of your name?
Yeah, it didn't happen on purpose, actually. It's kind of accidental. I went to ASU. I live here in Arizona. And all my friends, they were recruiting me to come and take their prereqs for medical school and pharmacy school and to help them pass their classes because they knew I was a sharp guy and wanted me to help them study. And then about halfway through school at ASU, I realized that I had all the prereqs done for pre-med. And it's like, that sounds like it might be a better job than trying to work some IT job doing computers like I planned on before and doing, network security and who knows, all that stuff. And so I switched over and decided I wanted to be a doctor. And I always was interested in health and health optimization and being an athlete. I loved, performing my best. And so it was kind of natural to transition over. And I was like, hey, these things that I'm learning for myself, I can actually learn for other people and pass that on and make a career doing it too. So.
Oh, excellent. What was your sport?
Basketball. So it's hard to tell on Zoom, but I'm actually 6'5". So.
Okay.
Dr. J's not a small dude.
Yeah, Zoom is very deceiving. That's the thing. I love meeting someone in person. They look up, they're like, wow, I didn't realize how tall you were.
Well, that makes the Dr. J a lot more to live up to, for sure.
Right, for sure.
Well, it's good to have you on, man. And I tell you what, health is a big thing, and it is a very big thing in our industry, even if it is very much neglected as it tends to be. So our podcast is generally geared towards the trades, and the trades is full of, well, a lot of things. Number one, a lot of bad habits, a lot of bad health habits. Number two, a lot of swing shifts, weird hours, long weekends, And number three, I would say it's full of irregularity when it comes to eating schedules because you're basically living out of a truck. And so there's a lot of, stopping at gas stations and convenience marts and everything else. And especially when you make all three of those combinations together and you put them into one industry and you say, well, let's take some people who have some bad habits and let's make them work 16-hour shifts in nothing but a truck and let's just see what happens, right? And so you can imagine that there is a bit of some health concerns in the trades.
Oh, and then with a 5-gallon bucket with a hole in it, we're going to dump stress just all day, literally all day. The life of a technician in the home services and particularly the skilled trades, it's stress from the moment. I mean, hopefully you have a good meeting and it's inspirational and educational, but literally from the time you leave from there, man, you're having a good time from time to time, but it's stress all day. Physical stress, mental stress, emotional stress all day. And then the people who listen to this add on top of that they have to be salespeople and face rejection all day. So what do we tend to do when we get to the end of one of those days? It's time for some rewards. And that usually goes in our mouths. Yep. It's chocolate and ice cream. Oh, ice cream. That sounds so good, doesn't it? It's ice cream and chips and slushies and all day sugar-free energy drinks and hopefully sugar-free, although it's not that much better, I guess. But it's just pain getting alleviated, quote unquote, and I'm using air quotes here, with things that just really compound it all and make it worse, but they feel great in the moment. So we're just, by and large, as a trade, we're as unhealthy as we can be. Yeah. And I definitely wanted to talk about hormone optimization with you, Doc, because that seems to be your specialty. But all in all, the full gambit of health and how in the world we're gonna turn this ship as an industry and get everybody back on the right track.
Yeah, no, that's huge. And then you talk about that during the day, and then they get home, and then it's the alcohol to numb all the stress of the day, and that's a big thing. Because I worked with a lot of owners of the home service industries, and that's the number one thing that I hear from them is they get their health in order, and then they're like, I wish my guys could be healthier. And you're talking about whether they have 2 or 3 techs to 700 employees or more. That these owners they're worried about all of you that are listening to this. Not only do they want you to sell more, but they actually want you to be able to enjoy your lives better and to feel good and to get home and to have a life that you love. Be able to show up for your wife and your kids, or find your wife and kids if you haven't done that yet, and have a good life, because they know that's what's going to sustain the business, by having happy, healthy, functioning technicians, not just running them all to death. And so people might be surprised at that. I've worked with multiple people that have huge employee bases, and they're like, I wish all my guys could get this information. And so yeah, we definitely will talk about testosterone, but let's talk about all those things. How can you eat good in a truck? How can you manage your stress better, and how can you not have to rely on alcohol or drugs or something else to keep that balance in life? So,
well, let's cut to the chase, doctor. Based upon the scenario that we just talked about there, is it even possible? Are we just doomed from the start because of the lifestyle chosen? Is there light at the end of this tunnel? How can we make it work?
Yeah, no, it's absolutely possible, because we do, our programs run from top to bottom. We have technicians, we have managers, we have other people, we have the owners. So like we can help people at all levels based on the different options that we have. And so I've talked to people in all the scenarios, and it comes down to just a little bit of time planning and a little bit of time prepping, and it can make that huge difference. And so that you don't have to be stuck in a situation where your only option is McDonald's drive-through, and there's not a good option for you to choose. With a little bit of planning, you can make sure that doesn't happen. And so there is absolutely hope, and just got to make it happen.
Well, I love that. And well, planning is not necessarily everybody's forte. So we're going to have to get a little bit simple on this thing. And, for the sake of my own mind, I'd like to get fairly elementary when we talk about it. When you say planning, what exactly are you referring to? Are you talking about meal prep? Are you talking about laying out your day? Are you talking about, keeping yourself stress free by certain activities? Where do we start? What's like the basis? Like if we can get this thing down, the rest of the pyramid can be constructed on top.
Yeah. No, and all those things are definitely key. You need to be able to plan for all those. I think the first place to start is giving your body the basics of what it needs, which is, meal prep. You need protein. When you don't have protein, your body's going to be craving different foods. And that's when you make the choices where you choose the Snickers bar, you choose the, whatever little donut thing that they have at the gas station. And so having a plan where you can get your protein structured, built in for your day. And that usually means, starting with a good breakfast. If you're working like crazy, you can't skip breakfast. You need that protein in, a good, healthy, quality protein in the morning, and that will set your day up to be so much more successful. And so, yeah, we definitely would love to dive in and talk more about that because that's key.
So how much protein should the average person get?
Yeah. So kind of the general rule we have is you need to get 1 gram of protein per pound of your optimal body weight. And so if you're 200 pounds and that's kind of a good optimal weight, which most people actually need more muscle mass than they realize. So say you're 200 pounds, you need to get about 200 grams of protein in per day. And that's going to take work.
Let's before we move on, Nate looks very excited to ask the next question, but if we're talking about 200 grams of protein, let's talk about what that looks like in terms of meat, because knowing these numbers had really changed the game for me personally. And for some reason, until just a few years ago, it never crossed my mind to know these numbers. How many grams of protein are in an ounce of chicken breast, steak, ground beef, egg?
So an ounce is kind of small. So let's go bigger. I think we can go, because this is what I do. So, and this is, I run a busy practice, being CEO, doctor of my practice. And so I do the same meal prep, and the same meal prep any technician can do. So 16 ounces of ground beef. So a pound of ground beef has about 100 grams of protein. And then a good 16-ounce steak, like a 16-ounce ribeye or 16-ounce New York strip, has about 120. All right, so we already mentioned I'm not a small guy. I'm 6'5", 225 is what I weigh. So I shoot for a minimum of 250 grams of protein. And so what I eat on a normal day is I'll get a pound of ground beef and I'll cook it up, whatever salt, pepper, Tex-Mex seasoning I throw on there, taco seasoning, and I'll have a pound of ground beef. And then I'll on Sunday, I'll cook multiple steaks. So whatever steaks on sale, I'll go to the grocery store and get whatever bulk pack of steaks, and I'll cook them all up for the week. And then usually I'll chop them up. And so then I'll have, a steak that's a pound, that's 120 grams of protein. I'll have a pound of ground beef, and combined, that's 220 grams of protein there that I'll have. And so I can split it up, whether I have one of those for lunch or one of those for dinner. And then somewhere in between there, you can get a little bit of Greek yogurt, a little bit of cheese, put it on top of that. And like protein is set. And I got my 250 grams of protein in per day.
What kind of leanness are you going for on that ground beef, or is it a big factor?
So the leaner the beef, the more protein it is, because it's all about percentages. So if you get like a 93.7 or a 90.10, it's closer to the 100. If you get an 80.20, it's a little bit probably closer to 90 or 85 grams on that. But it's just a small difference.
I didn't hear any carbohydrates in there.
So we're just talking about protein for right now. So just
okay. All right.
If you get your protein in, your hunger will be much more settled throughout the whole day, whether we're doing carbs or not. Because that's actually the problem. If you only get carbs in a meal, you're spiking those blood sugars up. And then when that blood sugar drops, you're going to be extra hungry. And then you're going to be, it's going to be harder to make another good choice after that. So,
all right, so let me push back a little, Dr. J.
You talk about breakfast as well.
Ahead,
do you do, how do you feel about intermittent fasting? Like I just know a lot of techs in trucks, myself included, even today, don't eat breakfast, rarely eat lunch. I will put 200 grams of protein between getting home and dinner.
So, yeah, I do. Like I myself usually don't eat my first meal till 10 or 11. So it depends on the person. But there is studies that show if you are having trouble making good food choices during the day, having that good high quality protein for breakfast is going to be beneficial for you. And those benefits of making that good first breakfast choice will be more beneficial than the benefits that could come from intermittent fasting after that. So, because it doesn't do you any good to, intermittent fast in the name of health and then eat your first meal at 12 o'clock, lunchtime, and you eat 3 donuts and a hot dog and have almost no protein and you have 200 grams of carbs. It's going to totally kill any benefit that would come from intermittent fasting. And so,
so doctor,
yeah, go ahead.
Sorry to interrupt you, but obviously you're a doctor. I assume you're working out of a facility. There's probably a nice lunchroom with a microwave and some of those finer conveniences in life that make eating ground beef a little bit more digestible. What about the technician who's in a truck all day? There is no microwave unless he wants to have a fairly awkward conversation with the homeowner. And what kind of help can we give him to stick to a protein heavy diet?
Yeah, that's true. I am able to warm up my meat, and that is a factor because cold meat is not as good as warm meat for sure. There's actually some interesting options where you can, of course, have insulated bags that have different warmers and things in them too. Investing in a little lunch pail that can warm up your food for you. There's some interesting things there. Even some like portable like air fryer type things that I've seen that are not that expensive, like $40, that you can plug into the outlet in your truck, and or the AC, or what's the adapter there.
Cigarette lighter adapter.
Cigarette lighter, that's what I'm looking for. And you can warm up your air fryer and or the little mini air fryer version and warm up your food that way. So there are some interesting options that are available out there for that. And in my mind, if I was stuck like that, then that's something like I would do. And because they're not crazy, it's $30-$40 for something like that. And that can make the difference. And have that option there fresh for you. So.
I'm struggling to see 25-year-old Brian in his plumbing truck going to buy an air fryer from Target with a cigarette lighter adapter. But I will say, now every gas station has a microwave you can go in and use to heat up the burritos you buy at the gas station. And I don't know, probably a dozen technicians who pack their lunch and go heat it up at gas stations when they're not near the shop. Know a lot of people who do that. And that's something you can easily do with a regular old cooler with a couple of ice packs in it, keeping it nice and cold all day, and then just hit the gas station, throw it in the microwave.
Yep.
Can do and will do. But
yeah.
Whatever it is, what we really have to say to ourselves, whether it's an extra expense, because everything he talked about doing for food, it's not cheap. Even the cheap stuff is not cheap. It's a lot cheaper to just be a $1 millionaire at McDonald's. But when you really think about it, it's like, is it worth it?
Yeah. Well, and you say that, but that $6 per pound of ground beef that you cooked at home. I know you talked about the dollar menu, but how many of them are actually buying from the dollar menu? And you go to Burger King or McDonald's and it's $12-$15, and you can get a steak and cook it at home for cheaper than that.
That's a great point.
The other thing is just, it really is like, is it worth it? And if you've never been healthy before, which had been me until rehab, when I started lifting weights and eating well for the first time in my life at 31, 32 years old, I had never been healthy before. So I actually didn't know what healthy me felt like. Now reverse engineer backwards, I'm like, man, it's so worth any one of these things that you could do. It's so worth it. But if you don't know whether it's worth it or not, you literally have to try it, and you have to try it for like 21 days, man. You gotta just nail down 21 days where I'm going to eat like this. And I'll say this, Kyle at the shop and I do this thing where we buy little cans of shredded chicken and little microwavable pouches of just pure white rice.
Yep.
And both of them get mixed together, go in the microwave for 90 seconds, I think. And you've got just hot white rice and hot shredded chicken. I'll do a little Worcestershire sauce. Kyle does a little teriyaki sauce, a little spicy for me. And that's lunch. So it's literally like, I forget how many calories it is. It's 84 grams of protein and 120 grams of Good. Would you say good carbs there, Doc?
So, yeah, and we can talk about that too. But there's really no such thing as a good carb or a bad carb. It's all the other stuff that goes with it. And so rice and just plain by itself is totally fine. But if you know, those carbs are different than a Snickers carbs, because the Snickers carbs has all the extra junk in it that you don't realize, with the chemicals and the flavorings and all the things in there that are also impacting people's health. But yeah.
What's your take on protein bars, protein shakes, and some of those quick, high intensity protein meals?
They're delicious. Don't listen to him. Whatever he's going to say.
So I call them candy bars with protein in them. Is usually what most protein bars are. They are there, and so they fall into the category of supplements. And people, they sometimes think of they miss the fact that it's a supplement and not an actual meal. And so it's used. They can be used as tools to help you to meet your main protein goal, but they should not be the main thing that you're eating protein-wise, because that protein has been processed. There's lots of other. It's just a lower quality than a whole protein source like an egg or a beef or a chicken. So, but yeah, it's kind of the protein powders and the protein bars. They're like the refined sugar of protein. And so, which is, like we just talked about, there's a difference between the refined sugar in the Snickers bar versus the whole carb that's in the rice. The same thing. There's the whole source of the protein versus the refined sugar version in the protein powder or protein bar.
So still better than not getting the protein, right?
Yeah. And as long as you're
that's
not
all I heard.
Eating it with the super junk, which most of them are pretty bad, but yeah.
What about like since we're on the topic, thanks for opening this can of worms, Nate. What about when you go to like Sprouts, like we have here, healthier food stores, and they have the aisle with the protein bars, and they're not like sugared up messes, but
most of them still are. And so they're just packaged better and marketed better to
stevia, stuff like that.
But yeah, so they're slightly better. And so, definitely looking for some options and finding one that is as little processed as possible is definitely key. And that's, I haven't been ever walking around an orchard and seen a protein bar growing on a tree. And so, but I have been, walking around a farm and saw, oh, there's eggs there, or different things like that. So, or there's, that chicken you can actually eat it. Not that you want to eat it, but you can cook it. And so the closer we can get to how, God naturally made it, the better that is going to be for us and all food sources. That's kind of the general rule. So.
All right. So Dr. J, I'm hearing you say, as far as doing a little bit of planning goes a long way, specifically to meal prep. We have the concept of some people take the weekend, their Saturday, Sunday, and they kind of make the food for the week. You go buy some of those little Tupperware containers that break it down, and maybe an air fryer for the truck, or maybe a microwave, and even planning out your route. Like, I think a big part of eating right is the regularity. And that's kind of the next subject I want to go into, because unfortunately that can be very difficult in the field. There's an element of knowing that at 9 a.m. I'm going to eat my meal. Well, today's 9 a.m. could be tomorrow's 11 a.m. could be the next day's just didn't happen. Like, things blew up, especially if you're like an install tech and you get there early and you're working all day. And that's just the way things are. Service techs, maybe you have a little bit more fluctuation in your day, a little bit more gap time on the road. And so you can make room for some of that stuff, but it's almost never necessarily at the same time, nor is it even at the same location. And so while the meal prep over the weekend can be certainly a good way of making sure that the diet contains the balance of nutrition that you're looking for, actually fitting it into the schedule can be fairly complex because of the nature of the trades. So talk to us about maybe some healthy habits or ways of dealing with irregular schedules, whether it's working a swing shift where, you start at 7 today, and then tomorrow you start at noon, and then the next day, maybe you're working second shift or something like that. Talk to us about some of those things where we can help develop healthy eating habits when we don't necessarily know when the meal time is coming.
Yeah, no, that's a great question, and it's definitely a big concern. And really what it comes down to is when you are getting your protein in, that's why I started with protein. Your hunger levels will be much more stable during the day. And so you can go further between meals. You can have a little bit more flexibility. you're not crashing low. And this is why the refined carbs are such a problem, because yeah, they taste really good, and you get that big dopamine hit, or the feel good, like Brian, like you're talking about, when you eat the donut, you feel good after, but you have that spike and then that crash. And when the crash is when that hunger kicks in, and when you just have less control over, those hunger chemicals are strong, and it makes you make bad choices. But the protein is like the stabilizer for that. And that, even if you're only get one solid meal into it per day, and you can control that one solid meal of really good high quality protein, that's going to set you up after that and before that to be so much more successful if you can continually get that in. So that you can survive the flexibility, because that protein is there giving your body what it needs.
It really is like you say, where if you don't eat all day, and I didn't eat until 4 p.m. today, and no big deal, because everything's kind of set and ready today, right? But let's say it's one of those days where everything goes chaotic and it's not what you hoped or planned on, and you end up going to dinner with someone, and now you haven't eaten, and it's 6 p.m. And when you're in a truck, this happens often. You just go about your day, you get into a job, and not nobody, but a lot of people are not taking their time out to go out to their truck and have their meal. We're just working.
Right.
And then you get to a restaurant, and they're like, what kind of apps do you want? And you're like, all of them, especially the ones where you dip the pretzel rolls in the fondue cheese. I'm talking to Kyle Brewer here. Every time we go to freaking Culinary Dropout, and you just hammer some appetizers. Like your it literally feels so close to addiction, where you almost feel like you struggle to tell yourself, don't do that. Right. Like, I'm not eating that. It's very difficult in those moments where, I mean, I'm sure there's some deep thing in your brain telling you, like, you're starving to death. Start eating. I don't care what it is. Like, start eating it. And the worse it is, the better, because the more heavy calorie it is.
Yeah. And there's definitely, the protein helps with that. But there's just kind of a realization too that you need to be aware of. There's food that's there to be food and to nourish your body, and there's literally foods that have been created to make you addicted to them. And so, like, I've heard someone say that that giving their grandchildren Oreos is like the highlight of their life. When Oreos were specifically created and developed to be like the most addictive food on the planet. There's zero nutritional value. It's pure addictive chemicals.
Oh, come on. Not when you dip it in milk. Then you got protein, you got vitamin D.
Still that. And so, but it's being aware of that. And so say you show up and you go to Culinary Dropout. They have amazing appetizers, right? Choose a protein appetizer first. Choose the chicken wings or something that has a little bit of protein there, because that will literally help you to not crave all the other stuff after, and to not eat as much of the other stuff after. And so that can make a difference. So
they do have great wings, and this is not a commercial for Culinary Dropout.
They need to start sponsoring this podcast, apparently.
Yeah, let's hook it up. Just a couple free lunches. We go there every Tuesday for crying.
So, yep. And I live close enough, Brian. We can meet there in Scottsdale whenever. And
yeah, buddy.
So, Dr. J, I want to be, somewhat of a realist here. Like, there's probably a lot of unhealthiness that's existing right now in the field. Driving, like, guy's probably driving in his truck right now, looking down at his lunch pail or whatever, his cooler, and a couple of the options in there didn't make the list that you kind of gave earlier. And so, as we're contemplating this, if somebody's like, hey, okay, yeah, I get it. Like, I've always wanted to be living healthier. I've always wanted to be making some of these choices. It's just so freaking hard. Like, are you the type of guy who's like, hey, cold turkey, this thing, you got to go full send, all in, here we go? Or is there a stepping stone method that you find to be more effective? Whichever way it is, like, what's step number one that, like, somebody who already has a fair amount of habits that are on the less friendly Dr. J side of things, what's the best way to kind of get them on the other side of the fence?
Yeah. Definitely I'm a fan of the stepping stone method, because that's how we get the most success long-term with the most people. If you're a person who loves the cold turkey and diving all in, then that's you, and do it. But the reality is, the first step is to start counting how much protein you're actually eating, and do the math. And I've had, thousands of people do this, and they realize that, I'm only getting, 75 grams of protein per day. I'm only getting 100 grams of protein per day, not even half of what I need to get in. And just being aware of that is really important, because then once you're aware of that, then you can start making that little bit better choice each time. And so then you can do some math. Okay, so if I'm going to hit 200 grams of protein per day, and or let's say 180, and 180 grams of protein per day, and I have 3 meals per day to do it in, and I'm getting right now some meals 0, some meals 20, because there's a protein bar that has 20 grams of protein, and then I get home and have some chicken breast and I get like 50 grams, right? And so they're getting 70 per day. So then you just make a little bit better choice and like, okay, how can I add some protein to this meal? And even if it is a protein powder or a protein bar, at least it's better. And so you can start building up, because the reality is protein is filling and you need to build up appetite. And this is the conversation I have with everyone. I just talked to a business owner. He has a big business this morning. He's getting like no protein in. And I mean, he's not going to be able to hit 200 grams tomorrow and do it in a way that's sustainable. And so just a little bit every meal, just start adding it in. And then over the next, and I told him, I'm like, I would not expect you to comfortably get your 200 grams of protein in per day until like 2 months from now, once you've built up your appetite to actually do that. And so it's definitely, it's a real thing. And really most people are so starving. That's why they crave all these negative bad foods, but you need to give your body more. You don't need to eat less.
When you say they're starving, are they starving for the nutrients that are coming along with, especially the red meat? I mean, the chicken and stuff, it's not really packed with nutrition, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But so it's the nutrients coming in these.
Yeah.
Go into a little bit.
Yeah. For your body to function its best, it actually needs all the building blocks to make it work. And so, and you can't skip that. And most people are starving, which is why they have food cravings, starving from those micronutrient levels. So it's not the carbs or the proteins or the fats that they're necessarily missing. It's the vitamin B12, it's the vitamin B5, it's the selenium, the zinc, the magnesium, the omega-3s, all those individual nutrients, the amino acids, all those that are the basic building blocks that make your body go. And just like for all these techs, you wouldn't show up to a job and not have the basic, screws or the basic, drill bits or the basic, individual pieces and components and things to do your job, whether you're putting an AC unit together or doing a plumbing job or whatever. You need the basic pieces, and you wouldn't be able to finish the job fast. Same with your body. If you don't have enough vitamin C, if you don't have enough amino acids, if you don't have enough omegas, your body's going to run slower. And those are the things that people are starving for and need to be there. And they're not there in the protein powders, they're not there in the processed foods, but they are there in the whole foods, in the the beef and the steak, and the chicken has some, but not as much as the red meat. But
eggs, yolks.
Eggs are great. Yeah, never skip the yolks. The craziest thing ever is that people would think that they should skip an egg yolk and only have egg whites. The yolk is the best part of the whole egg, and you need cholesterol. Cholesterol is one of those basic building blocks. You can't skip that either.
Dr. J, you said about people are starving for nutrients. I think another thing that people are starving for is sleep, although they may not necessarily identify that, or they may just, choose the man up mentality, the like, hey, this is what I need to do to work this job type of thing. And there's a certain level of machismo that comes with bragging about how you got 4 hours of sleep and still showed up the next day. And while I can certainly appreciate that
as
mindset,
there should be.
there are also costs to pay with that lifestyle, whether it's from weekend activities or just because that's what the job demanded. So again, it's a realistic world here. We have to talk to people who are asked to go above and beyond, and many times, especially in seasonal situations, high demand heat, cooling, freezing pipes, storms coming through, all kinds of stuff require in many ways long hours, which you burn the candle at both ends. So what does this look like? How important is sleep, and what can somebody in the trades do to live that lifestyle that's going to give great health?
Yeah, sleep is definitely another foundational piece and definitely cannot be overlooked. And I totally understand. There was one summer before I started medical school that my friend who does HVAC here in Arizona, he's like, hey, you should come work with me and be my runner for the day or whatever. And so we started at 8 a.m, and I think he already ran a job before he picked me up, and then he picked me up at 8, and we were on a roof at 2 a.m. the next day. We worked all the way through. I thought it was fun because he gave me like $1,000, and I didn't realize how much money we probably actually made that day. But anyway, that was a fun day. Never did it again because I'm like, I'm going to medical school, so I don't have to do this. But yeah, and definitely there's this badge, and this is for all levels, not just technicians, but even entrepreneurs and people running huge businesses. There is this misnomer and this misperception that sleep can be sacrificed, and you'll sleep when I'm dead. I'll sleep when I'm dead, kind of thing. But that's not how we perform our best. And being able to make sure that you get those hours of sleep are really important. And sometimes too, like these, and I know there's a lot of scenarios where the guys will wake up till 3, 4, 5 in the morning, and then they'll just go work all day. They'll get home, and that they get home with their wife and kids. Their kids want to play, want to do things, so they push through, and then they're finally get their kids to bed, and their wife is like, "Hey, let's binge Netflix for 2 hours," and so they're not getting to sleep till midnight, and then they have to wake up 3 hours. There's probably 5,000 people listening to this that's their schedule. And in that situation, you just got to have a talk with your wife, be like, "Hey, babe, I love you, but I need to get to sleep by 10:30 so I can make us more money, so I can get home sooner, and so we can do these things a little bit earlier," that type of thing. So the level, and going back to the question, it's scientifically proven, super clear. If you can get 6.5 hours, 7 hours of sleep per night, you will perform, function faster, brain will work better at exponential levels, just by getting a little bit more sleep. It's so important.
You're gonna love this, Nate. Doc's not a huge fan of my CPAP, and I do want to touch on that because I know I know grown-ups who need 9 hours. I was literally having a conversation like this, I don't know, several weeks ago with a grown dude. He's my bro, my buddy. Don't get me wrong. But he's like, nope, I need between 8 and 9 hours. And he's not a small guy and a little overweight, I'm sure he would say. And I wondered, or I actually asked him, didn't just wonder, I wonder how quality the sleep is that he's getting. And if he had a CPAP, now, obviously, all the other things you want him to do too. But if in the meantime he had that CPAP and was getting very good quality sleep, because 6 hours, there's no way I can stay in bed longer than 6 hours.
Yep.
There's no way with my CPAP. Now, before my CPAP, I could stay in bed 7.5, 8, 8.5, 9 hours, no problem, and feel like I'm sleeping great. So go into the fact of getting actual good quality sleep versus sleep opportunity, I guess you'd call it.
Yeah. No, and so, well, first off, so CPAP, if you need a CPAP to sleep better, it is definitely a good thing. But there's the real goal would then be figuring out, okay, why do you need the CPAP, and can we get that situation fixed, get your body functioning better, so there's not all inflammation going on that's causing you to need the CPAP, which we'll talk about another time potentially. But then, because sleep quality is really important, because you need to get that deep restorative sleep, which is another reason why, like I mentioned alcohol earlier, another reason why alcohol is really negative for you, because 100% of the time, if you drink alcohol, your sleep quality will be decreased that night, and even the next couple nights. It has multiple day effect. And so if you're continually getting a worse and worse quality of sleep, it's going to have a huge impact for you over time, and you'll need to catch up. And so, sleep quality is really essential, because 6 hours of high quality, deep restorative sleep is very different than 10 hours of low quality sleep. You're still going to wake up from 10 hours of low quality sleep feeling tired and unfocused and not able to perform your best, when 6 hours, 6.5 hours of high quality, deep restorative sleep is going to have a big difference for you.
Give me in a nutshell. What do I need to cut out to get rid of the CPAP? You're going to say gluten, aren't you?
Yep.
Is that a
other
high
inflammatory process? Yeah. No, definitely.
Gluten is a pretty high cause.
Gluten is one of the, and as gluten, American wheat is one of the most inflammatory foods we can get. So you can totally go to Italy and eat pasta and bread there, and it's very different than the pasta and breads here.
Let's go.
So yeah, let's go off the planet trip and go.
Yeah.
It's inflammatory. So basically, every time every person eats wheat, it causes a wave of inflammation throughout your body. And so it just depends on how fast you can heal from that. And so when it builds and builds and builds and builds a lot of inflammation, basically your whole body's on fire, and makes it really hard to get good sleep, or to feel your best, or to have even a good high quality functioning brain. And so,
Last year was the first year I didn't do carnivore or keto for 8 weeks straight. I've done it every year for since 2012, except last year. Just, I don't know why. Too busy, I'm going to call it. But I always say when I start rounding near the end of that 8 week, the amount of body fat that just eviscerated from me, it's insane. But I always run around telling everybody I feel better. I feel like I took a limitless pill. I'm sleeping better. It's the one time when I get toward the end of that 8 weeks, I don't need a CPAP. I don't really snore, and I don't take any kind of omeprazole, Prevacid, antacid pills.
Yep.
Like, I just run so much more efficiently on it.
That's because and I'm a fan of the carnivore diet too. It's probably not sustainable long term for everyone, but that is one of the cleanest, best anti-inflammatory diets that there is. So
what keeps it from being sustainable long? Just because carbs are so good. So ice cream is worth it.
Your body's actually made to bounce back and forth between carb burning and fat burning. And so when you get stuck in just fat burning for so long, eventually your metabolism will start to slow down. And so
that makes sense, because the weight loss does stop. I don't necessarily do it for the weight loss, but it's fun to see how shredded I can get from 8 weeks of not having carbs. But I do notice a significant drop off my weight at the gym during that time.
But yeah, strength decreasing and different things like that can definitely be a factor there. So,
well, Dr. J, you mentioned it a little bit ago, and we might as well dig into it now, which is the vices conversation. So the trades is unfortunately filled with its fair amount of those as well. You mentioned one of them earlier, alcoholism. Brian talked about addiction before that. And then we have caffeine and several other things to help overcome some of the obstacles that the trades brings, as well as the stress that it induces. So talk to us about some of the most destructive vices that you find are common to people, even though they might not consider it that way, and how ditching them could be beneficial.
Yeah. Well, I think definitely starting that conversation with alcohol is a key point, because it's interesting, because no one thinks alcohol is good for them, but yet it's still one of the things that, like, if you don't drink, people think you're weird often. And so, and I've actually never drank, so I don't know. I had some really good uncles, and I use good loosely, that set a really great example of how to destroy your life with alcohol. And so I thought, why would anyone ever want to drink alcohol? In fact, I was talking with my grandma, because one of them is 60 years old and still living with his mother and not able to take care of himself. But not that's where everyone ends up on alcohol. But it's really interesting, because the studies are very, very clear that show just there's zero positive that comes from drinking alcohol, aside from a social thing. But as far as physical, mental, and emotional, over time, there's just all negatives. And so, like, and I even just recorded a podcast and published this on my podcast, talking about the alcohol as a zero ROI, or negative in every instance of what it's going to do impact wise on your body. And but yet it's still popular, and it's still, so
let me tell you, Doc, since you've never tried it, it's pretty freaking good, bro. I mean, I'm not a drinker. I haven't drank since 2021. It's pretty good, man. It's an anxiety reliever. It makes socially awkward people very sociable. It really is nice to cap off a really hard day / week / month or whatever.
Yeah.
And I say that to say there are people saying that in their trucks right now as they listen to this.
Right.
And I mean it when I say it. If I could casually drink and not go off the deep end, which I will, I would still love to have a casual drink every now and then. So knowing that, and you'll just have to take my word for it, how do we combat that in the speakers of the trucks that are listening to this right now, to say that we understand. Nate's never been drunk, right?
Correct.
I have gotten Nate to drink a few times, a couple football games, but I end up drinking his drink every time. But how do we? I understand your pain. I understand how good it can feel, at least that initial hit of that alcohol, when the shot or the beer or whatever hits. it's kind of downhill from there. Everybody knows you never feel as good as you do that first 10 minutes of the drink, but you still keep going anyway. But how do we talk ourselves out of that?
Yeah. Good question. Because I've worked with lots of guys, and 100% of the time, the guys that tell me that they greatly reduce their drinking or stop drinking notice the benefits from it, and they oftentimes didn't realize how big of a negative impact that it was having. And they'll talk about the same type of thing. How it seems like in the short term they're getting those benefits, but we got to play the long game with this, and it's impacting every time. There's we talked about the physical effects. It kills your testosterone, it kills your growth hormone, it kills all your healing processes that are supposed to happen in your body, and ages you faster. And so being able to eliminate that or greatly reduce it can have test it out and just see, okay, because if you can't go 3 weeks without drinking, then there's probably a problem, and something is having control over you that needs to be addressed. And then once you realize that and you can be in control, and then you can choose to drink the alcohol versus having the alcohol controlling you, I think that's really key. So,
Man, it's tough because I know there are people listening who have been on board up to this part and just don't want to hear this, or back of our minds know what's up and that it's time.
Yeah.
Like it's been long enough. And I know because I've been there so many times. And Jordan Peterson says, and I don't know who would know better than him, he was clinical psychologist for 35 years or something, that about 10% of males will be taken out by alcohol. About 1 out of 10 will be just not killed necessarily, but taken out of the game.
Yeah.
Like they're not a high functioning member of society.
Yeah.
It was like, when you just think about it in those terms, and I hadn't heard that back when I was drinking, not that I don't think it would have helped all that much, but
right.
You think about the fact that you're rolling the dice of being 1 out of 10 people who are going to be kneecapped, so to speak, by the fact that you're going down a road. You're traveling down a road, and you there's no way to know where this road ends. I didn't, I was in Teen Challenge training center. It's an adult Christian rehab facility for 14 months to get off a decade-long opiate addiction. And I used to ask this question of the guys in there, mostly heroin addicts. And I would say, do you remember the point where whatever you were into went from casual fun to this is what my life consists of now? This will happen before food. 100% of the time, if you have to choose between this, your DOC, your drug of choice, alcohol, whatever it is, you'll choose that over food 100% of the time. And not one person could tell me a moment when it changed, but they remember when it was just casual, all of them. And I couldn't either. And all of a sudden it became everything. And when you're rolling this pair of die at 10%, every single time you decide to go back to it, it's a dangerous game if you have goals. If you're one of these nihilists that just believes that there's no point in anything and who cares, it's like, all right, do you. Don't get behind the wheel. But if you have actual goals and you have a life that you're trying to build and a family that you're trying to take care of or one day create, and that's a big goal of yours, and you keep rolling the dice over and over and over against, like, even if nothing ever happens, what message are you sending to everyone around you?
Right. Yeah. Well, and I mentioned my uncle who still is living at home, and I was probably 8 years old, and this is the story that made me never want to drink alcohol. And I remember watching him because he was an electrician. He was building this electrician company. They were starting to do well. He was having a team that was growing, and he was, apparently good at what he did. And he was the cool uncle, right? That I used to hang out with and drive around in his truck when he was going to try to pick up chicks when he was like 18. He would take me with him. And I remember riding in his truck with him, and the girl would get in and I'd be in the middle, and I feel like I was in the way, and he would drop me back off. And anyway, so anyway, he got married. He had 3 kids. His business was starting to go. He was starting to make money, and he just could not stop drinking. And I remember my dad went over and visited with him, and took me, and I was listening to their conversation, and he's like, no, he's like, I should be able to drink a beer with my friends. I should be able, and he kept going back to this. I can drink a beer and not have a problem. And ultimately, he chose to go drink a beer with his friends, and he came back and all of his stuff was on his lawn. And then from there, like, just, it took him out. And now, like I said, he's not even a functioning member of society, just like you were saying. And my other uncle did the same thing. Cocaine was what he did instead of alcohol. I mean, alcohol was there too, but, and now my other uncle is homeless somewhere, living somewhere outside of Kingman, Arizona, and not a functioning member of society. But you're right. It goes back to, that little argument of, I should be able to have a drink with my friends. Sure. But what impact is that going to have? And it just, as soon as you lose control, like you're talking about, that's really key. So.
Those are difficult stories to hear, Doctor. And I think the impact is more than just on you, the listener. Like, I think that's something that really needs to be spoken about. There's secondary effects to all of these decisions that are related to your health. Yeah, you're right. It is your body. And yes, you get to make those choices about it. But it doesn't mean that other people don't suffer the consequences because of your choices. Whether that's, making poor diet decisions and truncating your life, or making your life less enjoyable, or making your life more dependent upon somebody else, or it's, more obvious, I should say, in terms of abuse of chemicals and those types of things that actually cause real hurt and pain and just terrible tragedies. The world is full of so many of those stories of people who said, yeah, it's no big deal. And then it sure did become one. So, Doctor, we have a variety of listeners, and we've talked about lots of different subjects today. Appreciate your expertise on all of them. And yet there still might be somebody listening who's kind of like, okay, I don't do the drugs thing. Yeah, I could probably lay off a couple of drinks or something like that. And I know I have a couple pounds around the belt line that could probably shrink up. All right, I'll do my best on some more protein. That's cool. But I've also been feeling like I've just been kind of like tired, sluggish. I'm getting sleep, kind of losing some vim and vigor for life, not really feeling like I used to, like feeling like I want to feel like I used to, but not really feeling like it's there type of thing.
Yeah.
And I'm just not quite sure what's going on. Should I buy like a Mazda Miata or something like that? Or like, what do I need to do?
Nate, this is hypothetical, right?
This is,
just making sure.
Yeah. Is this testosterone thing real? Like, what's going on with that? Are there other possibilities? Talk to us about some of the things that you see in your practice.
Yeah, I know we started out on testosterone, and I was guessing we were talking about testosterone most, but now we're finally going to get to it, because it is really important. And guys don't realize, like we talked about, there's a big difference between normal and optimal. And when your testosterone is optimal, your brain is clearer, your mood is better, your focus is better, your energy is better. That's the hormone testosterone is essential for a male body, for all of your cells to function as best. And if it's functioning if you only have 50% of optimal or 25% of optimal, your cells are going to function significantly less on a day-to-day basis because of that. And that means less energy, less focus, less sex drive, less production and motivation and all those things. And the guy you talked about, because that's who I see, I've seen thousands of those guys come through our doors. Getting and just knowing and being aware of where your testosterone level is really important. And then also not settling for being normal, because normal Americans, especially American men, are all those things you just described. And so that's why we can't settle for normal. You can't just trust your primary care physician who's getting paid by your insurance and doesn't have your best interest in mind to be able to help you make a good choice on that.
So along with that, when we're talking about, testosterone replacement therapy, TRT, hormone replacement therapy, any of those things, I've heard the rumors, the negative stories, well, I'm going to become jacked up and I'm just going to, have to be shooting up my butt like every day with a syringe and that type of stuff. Like, is that legitimate? And then there's also the if I start this is a never ending journey, concern about like, hey, once you start TRT, you're on it for life. It's a life sentence type of thing. Walk us through some of the negative perceptions of what this is and whether those are legitimate concerns or not.
Right. So yeah, there's definitely some concerns that are out there, but ultimately, if you're going to somewhere that knows what they're doing with testosterone replacement therapy, they're going to get your dose dialed in where you feel good all the time, the whole week long, and you're not having the ups and downs, and you're just going to be able to get the benefits from it. There's very few. There's basically zero negatives that come from actually just testosterone by itself. But we just need to make sure that we're not going too high or too low, because most people on testosterone actually don't take enough, or they're taking too much, and that's when you get the being jacked and aggressive. It's actually the estrogen, not the testosterone. But also, the majority of guys on it, that those mental benefits, the emotional benefits, the focus benefits, the even just having a good memory benefits, as far as like mentally feeling like you're younger, is the best benefit of testosterone. It's not the increased libido, it's not the increased muscle, it's the being able to think clearly everyday benefit.
That is the biggest benefit is the I don't know. It really is a clearer feeling of being much, much younger than I am. But I was reading a study getting ready for this episode, and they were talking about testosterone levels in American men have declined about 1% per year since the 70s. So 40% lower today than we would have been in, say, 1975. And doctors are out there trying to make you fit into, if you're doing anything at all, they're just making you fit the mold of the modern 2025 American man, who's about 40% lower than we're supposed to be. Factors they put in this survey were obesity and poor diet, processed food, sugar, seed oils, less protein, less micronutrients, and healthy fats. Sedentary lifestyles, less manual labor and physical activity, endocrine disruptors like chemicals, BPA, I don't even know what that is, pesticides, chronic stress, higher cortisol, which for sure reduces testosterone, less sleep, get that CPAP, don't listen to doc, environmental toxins like air and water pollution, time to get that reverse osmosis, baby, and plastics, and then household cleaners. And what they talked about was everything that we've talked about in here: decreased muscle mass, decreased bone density, decreased sex drive, higher rates of depression, and much lower energy, all as a result.
Yep. Those are all, and because testosterone itself is very complex. Like you just listed all those things that are lowering testosterone, and all those are true. And that's the reason why it's really, really, really hard to get a guy with an optimal testosterone without taking testosterone. I get this question all the time. They're like, "Oh, can I get my testosterone up naturally and do all the things?" So I've tested probably 5,000 guys' testosterone in my decade plus career. We used to be really much busier than we are now when I changed our whole business model. Anyway, there was one guy out of 5,000, one guy that had a level, he was 1,150 and was not taking testosterone. But this guy had lifted weights every day, never skipped a day since he was 15 years old. He was literally a linebacker without shoulder pads on. I'm a big guy. He was broader than I am. He was like a door. And he was just jacked, and he was also a police officer. There's some studies that show police officers have higher testosterone because he was in a position of authority. And anyway, so he was like the one guy out of 5,000 that I've been able to test and be optimal by themselves. Wow. And everyone else is somewhere on that scale of suboptimal. And so going Nate, back to your question, yes, once you start on testosterone, if you want to be at that optimal level, you have to keep taking testosterone because your body just can't naturally produce it for all those reasons that Brian just listed. And just unless we go live up in the mountains and hunt our own food and eat raw meat and chop down.
Even then, Even then,
then,
with everything in the meat now, I don't think you're escaping it. I don't think
So-
that mountain exists.
I 100% agree. And so, yes, you'll need to be on if you're going to be feeling better and focused better, and your wife is going to like you better, and you're going to like her better. All those things, and you're going to be able to produce more cells. You're going to get through your jobs faster. You're going to be able to build a business faster, have more focus. You're going to not want to be lower than that. And so, like I tell guys that I work with, I'm like, hey, I plan on being on this myself for the next 100 years. So if you want to be functioning at any level, testosterone is going to be helpful for that. And so, yes, sometimes it sucks to stick a needle in your butt. You do it once a week, hopefully, or
Sometimes.
twice a week. So, it's just the mental thing of getting over injecting yourself.
So,
but yeah.
if somebody's like, all right, I've heard enough, at least let me get tested to find out for sure that I am that 1 in 5,000 optimal person.
I'd love for you
what
to
is
be
that?
number 2.
What's that process look like? Do you talk about what it costs? Like, how can people find this thing?
So yeah, you can. The thing with testosterone is most doctors, and if you're going through insurance, most doctors will not run it for you, unless you specifically ask, and sometimes then they won't even run it for you. So yeah, we're gonna have a special link on our website for anyone who's interested to get a discount on getting our lab tested, because we can send you order form and you can go to any local lab court where you're at. There are some states that make it a little more difficult, like New York or Rhode Island, but there's some workarounds just because of the state laws that are there. But yeah, you can go to Brian and Nate, I'll send you a special link that we have so you guys can get a discount code for your listeners to get their testosterone checked for really cheap. And so then we can actually see where you're at, and then we'll let you put it on the scale so you can see, okay, am I suboptimal or where could I potentially be? Because it doesn't have to be a weird conversation. It is a normal conversation. It's not that 50% of men are low, 99.999% of men are low. And so it just needs to kind of be normalized to know where you're at. And then you can make a good decision based on actual data of if you want to start testosterone or not, rather than, I don't know about XYZ, or, I don't like needles or whatever. And sure, all those are factors, but let's see where your number is and then you can decide.
What about women? All 7 of the women who listen to this show.
All 7 women. So if anything, low testosterone in women might be a bigger problem than low testosterone in men, which is a difficult conversation because women naturally have much less testosterone. And so women have like 1/10 of testosterone of men, but they are also consistently low. So women should also go to somewhere that knows what they're doing to actually evaluate their hormone levels. And with women, there's also the estrogen and progesterone, and thyroid is a bigger factor with women than for men. And so it kind of needs to be part of the whole picture with hormones. And it's very sad, but conventional medicine is horrendous, even worse with women about hormones than it is for men, if you could believe that. And so women definitely need to go somewhere that is going to look at your hormones differently, because your regular primary care or your OBGYN that may have delivered your babies probably doesn't know anything at all about hormones, and doesn't know how to help you with that. And so if you're not feeling good, if you're a woman and you feel that you're not feeling good, and you hear your hormones are normal, that should be a huge red flag, and you should go somewhere else. So.
I'll tell you this for the men and the women. I know several women who work with Dr. J through them telling us, not through Dr. J. He does not share people's information. But I didn't ask them if I could talk about it, so I'm not going to name any names, but very successful women who kind of say this same feeling that I feel ever since I've been on hormone optimization, which has been like 6-7 years now. If you don't wake up and even multiple times through the day and just kind of have that beat in your chest feeling, let's get after it. I feel like you need to get checked out, because that's how I lived most of my life, my adult life, and didn't know it until, whatever it was, 2019, 2018.
Yeah. Well, and that let's get after it feeling, that is literally one of the things that testosterone does in your brain, is it causes that feeling to happen. And so, for men or women, women, of course, like I said, need much less. A woman's optimal testosterone is 50 to 100 compared to men who are 900, 1200. And sometimes even a little bit higher for women. I have some women that feel really good at like 150. But you need to, if you're not feeling that, and for men or women, if you feel like your life is just blah, and that there's really no motivation in your life, you're not depressed. Your hormones
telltale sign. Telltale sign. That piece right there. Mm-hmm. What is it about testosterone that gives you that? It's like it sets up the reward center bigger when I'm accomplishing something or going after something.
So yeah, it does. It works on the neurotransmitter pathways in the brain to actually set those up for better success with the motivation of going. So like dopamine is a big part of that pathway, and dopamine, you can get a dopamine release by eating a candy bar. You can get a dopamine release by checking something off of your to-do list. And so we want to make sure it gets dialed in correctly. But it's literally makes those neurotransmitter pathways in the brain work better for motivation.
Before we let you roll, what's the name of your podcast? You mentioned it a minute ago and didn't.
Yeah. So yeah, my podcast is the Superhuman Entrepreneur Podcast. And we interview entrepreneurs, and we kind of take the tidbits and the gold nuggets from them, and we build some application out of that. And then sprinkled in, I do my own solo stuff where we talk about different peptides. We talk about testosterone. We talk about different parts of health, and add that into. So I figured I have a very ADHD mind, and I'm trying to do everything. And with like most entrepreneurs have shiny object syndrome. And I quickly realized that I can't keep changing what I'm going to do or who I'm trying to help. So my job is to just help all the entrepreneurs and let them do what they want to do to change the world in all their areas. So.
Well, I think you've helped us today, Dr. J, and so many of our listeners. Appreciate all the content that you brought to us. As we wrap things up with just one final question, because there is a diverse listening base also with diverse problems or struggles or difficulties that they're dealing with, maybe we come across somebody who's like, yep, all of the things that we talked about today is like my life right now. And we were to ask them like, okay, I'm like a bare basics, ABC type of guy. Give me step one. If you had to tell me the most important thing to focus on right now, is it protein? Is it sleep? Is it checking your hormones? Is it getting rid of the vices? Is it getting good exercise? Is it, getting some type of pattern or lifestyle that is more regular for me? Like what's a great place to start for anybody listening today?
The first thing that came to my mind is, for those of you that are married, ask your wife what you should do first, because that would probably be a good idea. She probably knows a lot. But then that might give you
put the phone down is going to be
put the phone down. Yeah. That would be, that's something that I even still struggle with. Like if you could just lock your phone up when you're at home for an hour, I don't know if any of us have actually done that, but
bro, easy. All right. Easy.
Like,
our wives aren't listening. You're just making enemies here.
So,
right?
But ultimately it's going to come down to, if it's just the basics of getting more protein in, that is a huge first step. And then, like I said, we also are going to have the link wherever you put in your show notes or however will get sent to you guys, so that we can make a super easy way to do that testosterone check for you and see where you're at, so you can actually make a good decision on that.
Hey, we'll get the, you said you'll do a discount link. I'll put it, I'll make sure it gets in the show notes for this episode. So wherever you listen to it, if you just scroll down, usually it says Waste No Day Facebook group, click here. We'll make sure this goes ahead of it for this episode. Also, like everything anymore, shoot me an email at service@wastenoday.net, and somebody will get you that discount link or whatever. Yeah. We'll shoot it right back to you at some point. So service@wastenoday.net, and we'll shoot you that link back.
Yeah, and it'll be something like Unstoppable 365 is our business. So it'll be something like Unstoppable 365/Waste No Day or something simple like that. So.
Well, Dr. J, we appreciate you hanging out with us on this episode and sharing the good news about getting healthier in our lifestyles. We could all use it, I'm sure, especially those in the trades. Really appreciate it, man.
Yeah, no, I'm glad to be here.
Definitely. I don't know what took us so long. Sorry, buddy. I took too long to get back up to my mic.
You did.
I don't know what took us so long to do this episode. You and I think we talked about it like maybe a year and a half ago or something briefly, and then just kept kicking the can. But I want to see in the Facebook group, I'm probably going to do a poll. Does it make sense to do like a quarterly episode like this where we just get back to the health basics, diet, nutrition, hormone, sleep, what have you? I want to know what everybody thinks about it. So if you're not in there, also shoot us an email there and just let us know, what do you think about this type of episode? What do you think about having Dr. J on as a more regular guest, a couple times a year or something like that?
Yeah. And because we can do deep dives into wherever, whether we go into meal planning and addressing insulin resistance, or whether we want to get fancy with peptides or other things too. Because this is what I do. This is fun.
Awesome. Well, we'll call that enough for today's episode and leave you with a lot of things to think about. It's been great to hear from Dr. J and introducing a lot of good habits that we need to be applying into our lifestyles right now. Whether you're in the truck, in the office, or anywhere else, it doesn't really matter. What he talked about today is universal application for healthier living. And as those of you know, the mantra here that we have is talk about waste no day. And I can think of very few things that will impact your ability to waste no day than maintaining your health and increasing that for you and for your family and those that love you. So it's a great reminder for us, and we're going to choose to leave it there for you, to choose to wake up each and every morning and waste no day.